Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast. This is your escape for real, unscripted conversations about sports, hobbies, life, and storytelling. No scripts, no forced takes, just Man Cave talk. Now, here's your host, Dan Kasper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Man Cave Podcast. Dan Kasper here with you as always. A big thanks for tuning in, whether you are listening on like Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's up on YouTube audio version as well, but this episode is also in video form. The full-on episode is in video form, so make sure you are also following our YouTube page. Just look up Man Cave TV. But a big thanks for tuning in and checking out this episode of the podcast. So I got to admit, on this episode of the podcast, I was probably just going to play a lot of our highlights from the morning show. Do that once in a while, put some segments up from the morning show and such. But it's just, and a lot of it was just going to be, you know, some of the latest Packers moves and such. But everything kind of came in hot and heavy this morning. Just got to do brand new episode of the pod, do original episode of the pod to kind of recap everything and put it all together and mesh it, you know, together nicely. So, you know, because yesterday uploaded a podcast and, of course, upload it, record it, and then the Rashan Gary news came out. So that's where I want to lead things off with this episode of the podcast, is talk a little bit about the Rashan Gary trade. Packers trading Rashan Gary to the Dallas Cowboys for a fourth-round pick. In my opinion, Brian Gutekunst fleeced Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys again. The fact that I think it was just widely assumed that Rashan Gary was not going to be back with the Packers, and a lot of times you see people that or players, excuse me, that we know that players are probably going to be released. If it's I guess what I'm trying to say, it's hard to make trades happen a lot of times for when other teams know that a player is probably going to be released. And I think that was the case here for Rashan Gary, especially, you know, when there was a post on his Instagram saying goodbye to Green Bay. Now you can say it was hacked all you want, conspiracy theory, put on your Robert Stack trench coats and have a little unsolved mysteries debate with that one. But the fact that not only was it not a 7th-round pick or a 6th-round pick or not even a pick where it was dependent on, you know, how well Rashan Gary was going to play, legit, straight-up 4th-round pick. I know it's in the 2027 draft, so it doesn't come this year, but still a 4th-round pick. That is a huge win for the Packers. You know, you open up your cap space, but then you get a 4th-round pick in return. Fantastic job by Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst for that move. That I did not see that coming, and I don't know if a lot of people saw that coming. So that, and it's in you know, you factor in the Colby Wooden trade that we talked about earlier in a previous episode. That's another defensive lineman gone, edge rusher gone, however you want to describe it with this group, because I think it's still, we're going to be 4-3, 3-4, combination of both. Let's just call it defensive line and call it good. So Colby Wooden gone, Rashan Gary gone, Kingsley Enagbare signed with the Jets. He's gone. Those are 3 defensive linemen out. Micah Parsons, odds are, might not be ready for week 1. So you got Lucas Van Ness, Barron Sorrell, and Colin Oliver. Green Bay is not going to open up the season with just those 3. I would be shocked at this point if they don't. And the way they're going right now, they may have just signed a defensive lineman while I'm recording this. But I would be shocked if Green Bay now doesn't bring in a veteran, a free agent defensive lineman or 2. I think with these moves, it forces the hand that they have got to add a couple of bodies in free agency on that defensive line. A run-stuffing defensive lineman, another pass-rushing defensive lineman. They got to bring in more bodies, you know, whether it's a DJ Reader or Logan Hall or, you know, Calais Campbell type players, 1-2 year deal type of players. So I just think that the fact that Green Bay was able to get a 4th-round pick for Rashan Gary was such a big-time move for for the Pack. I'm probably overselling it a little bit, making it a bigger deal than what it is. It's just I think we're all kind of flabbergasted and surprised that they're able to get something in return for him. So, and then Elgton Jenkins being released. I'm sure Green Bay tried to find a trade partner. Couldn't, like they did with Rashan Gary. I don't know if they tried with the Cowboys again, but couldn't. And by releasing him, you create nearly $20 million in cap space. So all these moves with Rashan Gary and Elgton Jenkins and the restructures are converting bonuses and such from McKinney and Aaron Banks. Green Bay is actually in a decent salary cap space right now. So if they wanted to make some moves, they can. And to add on to that, they released Nate Hobbs after 1 year. Not just released him. If they would have said, we're just going to take the dead cap hit all on this year, and they could have, they would have had about $800,000 available in cap space from that move. But they're doing it from a post-June 1st designation, which means they're going to have nearly $9 million available in cap space. Now, the caveat to that, though, is they're not going to have that cap space available until, you guessed it, June 1st, post-June 1st. So that's what they're not going to be able to use that money right now. But where they can use that money for this year yet, for this year's salary cap, is extensions. Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft. So if they get to the summer where they're like, you know what, now we want to extend some players. We want to keep some players. They're due for some pay raises. Tucker Kraft, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson are probably the top. Devontae Wyatt, they're probably the top four, right? That's where that cap space can help them out this year. Green Bay is not doing a post-June 1st designation without the idea of using that cap space this year. And the fact that it's not going to be available until past June 1st tells me that that's going to be used for extensions for somebody on their team right now. One of those four players probably. And so they released Nate Hobbs, but before they released Nate Hobbs, it was reported that the Packers signed a corner, Benjamin St-Juste, from the Chargers last year. Before that, 4 years with the Commanders, was a third-round pick out of Minnesota. And he's a tall corner, 6'3", about 200 pounds. You look at his Pro Football Focus numbers, 11th, graded 11th out of over 100 corners from Pro Football Focus, which, I know we had some people say, well, how did Green Bay get him so cheap? 2 years, $10 million. Part of it was because his first 4 years in Washington left a lot to be desired. Went to the Chargers on a prove-it deal. Wasn't a full-time player with the Chargers. So, not up there in terms of snap counts and such. But the interesting part with Benjamin St-Juste, too, is when he's a taller corner. So, you look at Green Bay's corners, right? At that time it was Hobbs, Javon Bullard, Keyshawn Nixon, maybe more of a slot guy. But they bring in their tall corner. But he was also a key special teams player for the Chargers. So maybe that factors into it here a little bit as well. Even so, even if they still had Nate Hobbs at this signing, corner to me is a position that they are going to address in the draft early. I feel like that is where they need a long-term solution at corner. Benjamin's there for a couple years. Keyshawn, Carrington, about a year left. They need some long-term stability at the corner position. Maybe it's an early day 2 pick and an early day 3 pick. Green Bay has drafted corners back-to-back before. Okay, Jair, Josh Jackson. Josh Jackson didn't work out. But it has happened before. They could do the same thing. I look at the top 2 needs still on this team is defensive line and corner. Defensive line, I think you go into still this free agency and find some veterans to fill those holes, to find some depth at defensive line. You go into the draft now and find some long-term stability at your corner position. That's how I would take those two. And then I think one of the more, I don't know if I want to say underrated signings, but a signing that kind of people didn't really see a whole lot is the Packers bringing back Kennard, their tackle that they acquired from the Eagles last year. That's a good depth signing He has had experience last year, right guard, right tackle. Maybe he could be their swing tackle. But I think bringing in a veteran backup tackle at that spot and a guy who's got experience already playing for you and even a little bit guard, it was like a 1 year, $3 million and change type of deal. So I like that move just to bring in a little bit of depth to that. So that one kind of, and there's been other moves like Christian Welch coming back, which I think is a special teams move and such. So, but overall, I think the job that Brian Gutekunst has been doing right now for Green Bay in the early goings, it's been solid. I think they've been some really solid moves. And I don't want to grade it or anything like that. We're still in the infancy stages of this thing. We're still early on. But there hasn't been like, oh my God, big splash moves or signings like that. And I don't think they necessarily need that. But they've set themselves up to where, okay, if there is a guy that they want to spend a lot of money on and they can still do some restructures, they're in a position to do that if they wanted to do that. They're in that spot. I don't think they go out there and spend $20-some million per year on a player, but I could be wrong, and I wouldn't complain if they did, depending on the player. But I think what Goody and this front office and Russ Ball have been doing these last couple days here, when you add in what they did over the weekend, I think the Sean Ryan deal looks a little bit better now, considering what the market is for centers. I like a lot of the moves. I like them. Now, we'll see if they work out on the field, right? Because last year you look at those moves with Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs, they didn't work out. Well, at least for Nate Hobbs it did. Hopefully it does for Aaron Banks, in year 2 for Green Bay. But so far, solid moves, I would probably describe it. Solid depth type of moves for Green Bay. And hopefully it kind of continues. I mean, Saturday they did something, traded for Franklin. Sunday they did something, re-signed Sean Ryan. Monday they obviously did something, releasing Elgton Jenkins and trading Rashan Gary. Tuesday they've already done something with Nate Hobbs and Benjamin. So we're on track to maybe have some moves each day this week. And again, might even be more after I record this because that's how luck rolls. So, but that's kind of, I just wanted to do a really quick podcast recapping some of the latest moves from the Packers front because, again, I was going to just kind of replay some of the segments from the show, but everything just kind of happened so fast and right then and there. I'm like, let's just take a step back, take a quick step back and just kind of recap it all together here. So, but hey, hit me up with an email or hit me up on Facebook or Instagram. How do you think the Packers have been doing? Goody, Russ Ball, in the early stages of this NFL offseason and free agency? And what do you think has been the best move so far at this recording? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. All right? I'd love to hear from you. So, but again, this is just going to be a really quick episode of the pod because things are still moving in the NFL world. I mean, other moves that have been out there. I mean, Tyler signing that massive center deal with the Raiders spending cash because they have cash to blow. Quay Walker's over there. Nakobe Dean's over there. Malik Willis is with the Dolphins, which is no big surprise. We mentioned Enoch Barre going to the Jets. Tua's going to be in the Atlanta Falcon. That happened really quick. So Mike Evans with the 49ers, that's going to be kind of weird to watch. But, yeah, and we're not quite done yet. We're not even quite done. We're not even close to being done. That was just day 1. Day 2 might have some more crazy stuff. And I really like what the Panthers did by bringing in Lloyd, the linebacker, and Phillips, the edge rusher, too, to give Ejiro Evero some defensive help over there. I think the one thing with the Panthers that was maybe a little surprising was Rico not re-signing with the Panthers. He went over to the Steelers. I think that was a good signing by the Steelers, to be honest with you, and the Steelers acquiring Michael Pittman. I mean, if you're Aaron Rodgers, why wouldn't you want to go there right now? But that was maybe a little surprising that they didn't do that. So, but yeah, we'll see what they kind of do with that because they want to run the football. We know that. So maybe that's something to draft or elsewhere out there too. So, but hey, that's going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. And again, seriously, I would really appreciate it, guys and gals, like on Apple and Spotify, if you could give a 5-star rating. I know a lot of haters out there like to do low grades and low ratings just because they're haters and such. So if you could give us a 5-star rating positive review like on Apple. That would help us out tremendously. Follow that YouTube page, Man Cave TV, as well. That would be a great help to us, too. So big thanks for all the support. And we'll have another episode of the Man Cave podcast coming your way tomorrow. Not even if there isn't anything really to talk about with NFL free agency, got a couple things, kind of Man Cave off the topic things to be hitting up. So till then, I'm Dan Kasper. I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave podcast.